And I wonder about us as a nation. I wonder about how we move forward in the midst of all of this grief, in the midst of so much pain, in the midst of racism and sexism and classism, of homophobia and transphobia, of disability rights and those who would not even see a person with any kind of handicap condition.
And the question is, how has each generation move forward and see this place? How do we carry that obligation of stewardship forward? We know one thing for certain is that we have a country that is already full of extractive resources, full of amusement parks with light and heavy sound, but there is only one place that looks and sounds like this. And my last point is that you do not need to hike 750 miles to appreciate your national parks or Grand Canyon, and I can assure you that you can get lost anywhere, including on the shores of Lake Chautauqua like Kevin and I did yesterday. In the rain, of course, but you can find magic and wonder in all of our open spaces.
Our perspectives are so important. If you tell the story of place anywhere on this continent, that story has to begin with Native people. You must strive to understand Native people in their own terms. You must understand our history and how we've gotten here. I can see even now there's an attempt to understand oral history tradition from this Judeo-Christian perspective, and it really retracts from the richness of those narratives. You cannot hope to understand Indigenous people if you are applying your own labels or religious understanding. It doesn't work. A lot of times it's just not translatable. We see the world differently, and this is how our oral traditions, our sacred histories quickly become myths, folklores, and simple stories, and they become seemingly dismissed. Their importance becomes devalued. So oftentimes I hear stories or perspectives being taken out of context, or the rich cultural embeddedness just wholly ignored.
But I think there's often this attitude when we're talking about communities that are touched by economic downturn or by environmental degradation, like, why don't you just move? Why don't you just leave? And for the Yurok people, obviously they can't leave. Their culture and identity and history are intimately tied to the salmon and to the river. If they were to leave that area, they wouldn't be Yurok anymore. But I even think for non-native people, it's not so simple for a logger in the redwoods or a coal miner in West Virginia or an oil field worker in Texas to just pick up and move and get a job at a solar farm in Arizona. Those skills are not transferable.
Each spring, before we open the gates for our general program, we do field trips for local schools. We have grade school kids from Chautauqua County coming in, learning about science, learning about sustainability. They're down at the lake, they're collecting algae, they're looking at it under microscopes, they're doing experiments. But they're learning about sustainability through more than just science. They're learning about it through poetry, through reading, through the arts. And we really think, that's the Chautauqua way. We embrace all of those things. And so when kids come to Chautauqua, we want them to be able to access the concept of sustainability in a way that they can relate to. And for one kid, it might be the microscope. For the next kid, it might be the poem. And for the kid after that, it might be a painting. And so we incorporate all that, and as an institution of the arts, we're well equipped to do that.